Today I'm going to do a video response to a question that was posed to me by a YouTube user, Ashley Connor, and here's her video.
So we have a Mazda 626 1996. None of the fans work. I have them hot wired. You hook this up and it runs the fans.
Okay, first off, you should never need to hot wire the fans. The fans run off of the engine coolant temperature sensor, which is this sensor right here. That is the engine coolant temperature sensor. That is what commands your fans to come on and off. Because you have a coolant leak and your car is overheating, it's possible that your engine coolant temperature sensor is faulty, and that might be a reason why your fans are not being commanded on. Also, in the fuse box, you have cooling fan relays. Those are these three. So make sure that your cooling fan relays are working correctly. I don't know how it's going to be on your 96. Your 96 is a little different than mine. I have a 1995, and I do have a distributor, just like you. However, mine is OBD1. OBD2 began in 1996. So one of the first things I suggest you do is go find an OBD2 scan tool. The port for that will be right down here, right below your steering column, and you'll just stick in the OBD2 code scanner and it will read out your trouble codes for you. And you can get that done for free at some auto zones in the US. Since you own a 1996 or newer vehicle, I would recommend that you just go out and purchase a cheap little scan tool, and you can have that because all vehicles after 1996 have onboard diagnostic system too. So you can use that in other vehicles as well. It's a universal scan tool, so any vehicle that you have from 1996 all the way into the future is going to be able to use that diagnostic code scanner. They come in real handy, and in your case you would probably definitely want to read your codes and see what your car is trying to tell you what the problem is. If you have a check engine light, that means a code is being set, and you can read it with the scan tool. That's what that check engine light means. It means there's a code waiting to be pulled, and it wants to tell you what's wrong with the car, and all you have to do is go in and pull that code, and it will at least give you a clue as to what is going on.
I have to put water in it 4 or 5 times a day.
Having to put water in your car multiple times a day means there's an obvious leak. And I noticed that you have gravel, and it's going to be really hard to see exactly where the leak is. Put cardboard down. Shove some cardboard, you know, like a refrigerator, heck, even a pizza box or something like that, right under where you think the leak is dripping. Shove that under there. Pretty much pinpoint exactly where the leak is going to be.
Whether it's just in the yard or whether it's on the road. We have a leak somewhere behind this, not sure where yet.
You believe there's a leak back behind the intake component somewhere, and the most likely culprit for that would probably be this thing right here. This is your outlet. It is a fairly large block right there that you can see, and that is the coolant. It shoots out into that block out of the engine, and that's a coolant rail, and part of that goes this way into your radiator, and the other part shoots back here through a whole bunch of little hoses, and you'll notice it looks kind of like a spider web of hoses back here, and some of those are coolant. And one of those goes up here to your idle air control valve, and that is warmed up with coolant, and this is actually a coolant hose, and then the outlet for that coolant hose is down here, which is really hard to see because of my lighting. But there's an inlet and an outlet, and another part of that goes back here into the firewall. There's 2 hoses that go back into the firewall, and that goes into your heater core. Let's say you put your heater control module on heat. Actually, that's AC. I think heat is to the left. You put that on heat, and it doesn't blow out hot air. That's a symptom that you're not getting enough hot coolant into your heater core. And the best thing to do in that case is remove your intake. And I have a video on how to remove your intake components, so I would recommend you watch that. And I'll post a link to that video in the description so that you can easily find that one. The best thing to do in order to pinpoint those leaks is just remove your intake components. Now, it is possible for your IAC to leak internally, and then coolant will actually go into your intake manifold and then be distributed out into your combustion cylinders. Obviously, coolant is not fuel. It will not burn. It will make your engine run like crap if the seal inside your IAC is actually leaking coolant into your intake manifold. That's one possibility. More than likely, because you're overheating, you are going to have a coolant leak, and because you have to refill your cooling system regularly, like ridiculously regularly, it's probably just going to be either the coolant rail leaking. There is a gasket right there, it's a metal gasket, and I've had that same issue, and it's a really easy thing to replace. You can get that in an auto parts store, that metal gasket. You actually have to drain the cooling system because you can't just take that off without draining the cooling system. Another common issue is that some of these hoses, especially if you're overheating, some of these hoses might have a cut or a split in them, and they are spurting out and then gathering in this area and then dripping down to the back. It is also possible that you're just dripping coolant out of one of those heater hoses that are connected to the firewall. So there's a lot of things to check. And you say whether it's sitting in the yard or on the road means that it's just going to be a leak when the system is not pressurized. So you either have a big split in a hose or a leaking gasket somewhere.
Let me crank it up for you to hear it. It sounds really bad. The engine light stays on, it runs hot.
That is one of the saddest starts of a 626 I've heard in a while. Alright, when your engine is cranking really slow, it means that your starter motor does not have the correct amperage. That means you either have a low charge battery or a dying battery. One symptom of that could be a failing alternator that is not recharging your battery. So that's something to look out for as well. Another thing could be physical resistance. There could be a lot of sludge in your engine preventing it from having a really smooth crank over. But more than likely, because of some of the other symptoms that you have, it's probably just going to be electrical. I believe that you might also have some electrical issues. So check your ground cable right here. This cable that goes right here to the chassis, make sure that that is good metal to metal contact. That's your main ground. More than likely it's just a really low battery, so make sure your battery is fully charged. But you did get it running and starting, so at least your fuel system is working correctly. But I think it's probably just a low charge on that battery for why it was slowly cranking over. Usually if it's going to be a fuel issue, then it will still crank normally. It'll crank fast, but it'll take a couple cranks or a couple attempts until it actually kicks in for that fuel pressure to actually get up to your fuel rail. In your case, it was a really slow crank, and that usually means it's a low battery charge.
So that's what it sounds like, really bad.
Now I can also hear a really rapid set of clicking. And that rapid clicking could be a solenoid activating and turning on and off really quick. It'll switch really quick. It's a magnet, electromagnet, that turns on and off really quick. Could be a solenoid turning on and off really quick, which will mess with your vacuum pressure and some other things. Or it could be a spark loss. It's actually the sound of a spark or an arc, electrical arc, which sounds very similar to a clicking solenoid actually. So check the back side of your wires here. Make sure that there's no open where you can actually see wire inside of your jackets, because then that will arc to your valve cover and will create a misfire in a cylinder, and that will make your car run like crap because the spark is not getting to the cylinder. Instead, it's being lost here on the valve cover and sparking and arcing.
Take it in and out of gear, and it kicks really, really bad. Like, well, it's not doing it now.
Since it's not doing it right now, that would be an intermittent issue. Along with some of your other electrical issues, that's probably fairly normal, that the low voltage getting to the transaxle range switch could be the culprit for that. It's trying to switch in and out of the wrong gears. There is a possibility of transmission related issues along with hard shifts. It could also be bad motor mounts. It could be a lot of different things. So I'm not going to venture a guess onto that, but there is a chance all of your electrical issues are related, especially with a low charge battery. That's just making matters worse in trying to diagnose what the issue is with a low battery. First thing, charge your battery up to above 12.4 volts. That'll make your life a lot easier in diagnosing issues.
But as you can see, it's on cold now. In a few minutes it'll be buried on the hot.
Now if it's buried on the hot fairly quickly, yeah, you're obviously having some type of cooling issue. Since you're losing coolant, honestly that is expected. Overheating due to loss of coolant is absolutely normal. It's almost expected. You need to first take care of your cooling issues and get a cooling flush, and then you should expect to see normal cooling levels on your water temperature gauge.
Engine light stays on.
I also noticed that your idle speed is rather high. It's sitting at 2K.
You can turn the air on. Sounds really, really bad.
Yeah, that does sound really bad. Yeah, I think that's just going to be a blower motor. It looks like a hamster cage. It's a round wheel, looks like a hamster cage in there, and it has really thin fins, and when that hamster cage turns, that's basically what provides airflow through your air vents. It's a fan, but it looks like a hamster cage fan. And in order to get to your blower motor, you have to get down and under here, under your glove box, remove your glove box, as well as the shield below the glove box, and then you'll see the blower motor assembly up in there. You'll have to take out that blower motor assembly, disconnect some wires, take out the blower motor assembly, and then replace the blower motor fan wheel, which is also known as a hamster cage. And I believe that'll fix your issue for why that sounds like crap when it's running, because I think it's imbalanced.
Do not know what's wrong with it. We just put a brand new water pump on it.
Putting a brand new water pump on it is a good idea. You went too far there. First you have to fix the coolant leak. The coolant leak is definitely what's causing your car to run hot. Without the proper amount of coolant in there, it's not able to cool itself. First priority should be taking care of that coolant leak.
Still running hot. The only thing I can think of is that leak, and I still can't find it. So if you can, hit me up. Let me know what you think.
Yep, I think you're right. I think your assumption that most of your issues are coming from that leak are correct. You have to find that leak first. Actually, I think you're dealing with 4 different issues here. 4 major issues. 1, your battery charge. Make sure that that is above 12.4. With a low battery, you're going to have different electrical issues going on in your car, especially if it's below 10, 9 volts with that really slow crank. Charge your battery to above 12.4, and I think you'll find things are going to work a little bit better for you. Number 2, you're either going to have spark loss somewhere in your ignition system, because I can hear that really rapid clicking, or it's going to be a faulty solenoid, probably one of these two on the back, either your Purge solenoid or your PRC solenoid. And actually a faulty PRC solenoid could give you a long crank time. It's not going to give you a slow crank, but it'll give you a long crank. So check out those 2 solenoids right there on the side of the intake manifold. Number 3, obviously, coolant loss. You need to find that. That's your major culprit. That should be priority number 1, is finding that coolant leak. After you find that coolant leak and you fix the coolant leak, flush your entire system. And then obviously number 4 is going to be your blower fan below the glove box. I believe it has an imbalance, and that's why it's kind of purring. So get that swapped out. It's just a plastic part, fairly cheap part, probably 10 bucks from any auto parts store. You can just swap those out, no problem. You got 4 issues to deal with. Most important is finding that coolant leak. Hopefully this video has helped you a little bit, headed you in the right direction. I usually don't do video responses, but your car is having some serious issues. You obviously have no idea what direction to head, so hopefully that's giving you a little bit of direction. And if in the future this video can help others, then I'm all about it. I'm not a mechanic, I am a DIYer, however I do specialize in the FS. I know a lot about it. I'm a good person to ask. I'm not a mechanic again, but I am a good person to ask. And if you make me a detailed video and you ask me for help, I will make a video response, as long as it's something that I can easily make a video for. You know, if it's something like, hey, how do I take apart my intake manifold to do this or that, or clean the EGR, or, you know, do something that requires me to take apart part of my engine to show you, I'm not going to do that. I'll tell you what to do and maybe reference you to a couple of videos, but I'm not going to take apart a lot of my stuff just to show you what to do. But I will try and answer your questions if you pose them to me in a video format, or even in a text format. If you ask me a question, I'm pretty good about trying to answer it. So actually, I hope this video has helped you and headed you in the right direction. If you have any further questions, feel free. You know, I'm here, and I want to see 626s stay on the road. So good luck. Hope you enjoyed the video. Cool.